Geo is a truly special element. It has access to zero meaningful interactions with any other element that can help it do cool things. Therefore, in order for a Geo team to be competitive in any way, it must simply do good raw damage. And there just happens to be a new unit that helps with exactly that, Chiori. Chiori boasts an extremely complicated kit. You press E again, and then she'll switch off by herself without the need for any additional inputs. TLDR, she does damage from off-field with her doll named Tamoto, who isn't a Geo construct by the way, so it can't be destroyed if your enemy sneezes. Chiori is a Geo sub DPS, aka a more competent albedo. That's literally it. Thanks to her simplicity, Chiori can be used in a wide variety of teams, especially when paired with other Geo characters. Today, I'll show you what I believe to be the best Geo team, or at least a top contender among the best Geo teams, and by far the most enjoyable one to play. Stay tuned. Welcome back to the series on the channel titled simply B.A.T, short for Bat Chest, acronym for Best Abyss Teams. As always, I will break down and provide a detailed yet concise guide to one among the diverse plethora of quote-unquote meta team comps in GenshinImpact. If you like today's content, please consider dropping a like and subscribe, as I will be doing many more of these guys in the future. Anyway, let's examine this great Chiori team. The team comp in question today consists of Chiori, Navia, Furina, and get this, Xianyun. Yes, this is in fact a Navia Plunge team. You set up Furina and Xianyun's off-field skills, chuck Tamoto on the ground, and then go ham with Navia with her shotgun, and weave Geo-infused plunge attacks between each E-skill cast. Well, you can of course use Bennett variants of the team instead and stay on the ground, such as with Bennett Xiangling, Bennett Furina, Bennett Yelan. They all work great, but the Xianyun version is superior for a few reasons. First of all, it's slightly more damage overall. It's not a big or even definitive advantage, but it is worth mentioning. More importantly, however, you completely ditch circle impact. Furina, Xianyun, and Chiori, none of them have requirements for you to stay in a tiny ring. You're free to move around as needed. Lastly, and most importantly, the Plunge team grants by far the most satisfying gameplay feedback. Unlike her normal attacks, Navia's infused plunges feel extremely impactful, and they do wonders to fill the void and boring downtime between her thunderous E-skills. She rains down freedom on the enemies American style with massive shockwaves in between her shotgun shots, which creates an awesome effect when combined with the chaos of thousands of multicolored numbers with her ult, Xianyun's Starwicker, Tamoto, and Furina's goons. I genuinely believe that Hoyo made Chiori's A4 coordinated attacks triggerable via plunge attacks just for this team. Alright, enough yapping, this is how you actually build the team. Chiori. In terms of artifacts, you have two choices, 4-piece Golden Troop or 4-piece Husk of Opulent Dreams. They end up doing around the same damage, with Golden Troop favoring Tamoto's damage and Husk favoring the burst. If you have a good set of either one, there's no point in forcing a switch to the other. However, Golden Troop is the preferred choice if you're starting a fresh set. It is massively more resin efficient. For stats, you should be looking for a def % stance, geo damage % or def % goblet, and a crit circlet. Look for as much crit and defense as possible on the substats. Attack % is also acceptable. Don't bother with energy recharge, just burst when you have it. Whether it's every rotation or every other rotation doesn't really matter. As for weapons, Chiori's signature is amazing, but it isn't as impactful as her C1 for this team if you're deciding between the two, and I'll talk more about that later. If you don't have the signature, simply stick to another 5-star stat stick, Wolffang or Harbinger of Dawn, which is the best free-to-play option. Xianyun should heal enough to counteract Furina's drain and keep the Harbinger passive fairly consistent. Navia's build is extremely straightforward. Big crit weapon good. Attack, Geo, crit main stats, and as much crit and attack as possible on the subs. Obviously, this is a Furina team, so Maréchal Hunter is the automatic best in slot. You might have some great pieces lying around since the two characters on this team all use Golden Troop, which is in the same domain. If you already have a good Nighttime Whisper set, you can of course use that instead. Energy recharge is not a big concern at all. Chiori generates so many more particles than Albedo or Zhongli in practice, you can get away with very little ER on Navia. Build 120 if you are paranoid. Furina, standard 4-piece Golden Troop build for personal damage. Signature sword, Festering Desire, some other 5-star weapon, Favonius, Pipe Sword, same old same old. Try 180 to 200 energy recharge and adjust from there. For Xianyun, Noblesse or Songs of Days Past are both great. Look for triple attack main stats and as much recharge as you possibly can on the substats. As for weapon options, Xianyun's signature is great, and Oathsworn Eye is a fantastic second choice. TTDS is good but extremely cringe. I'd rather you use Favonius instead, as a last resort. That's how you build the team, and this is how you play it to bring out its great potential. As I said earlier, you simply cast all of your support abilities roughly in descending order of duration. Make sure you burst on Xianyun after Furina to ensure the initial surge of fanfare front load, and then go crush some plebs with Navia's shotgun and them juiced up plunge attacks, baby! One thing I must mention beforehand is that when you cast Chiori's E skill twice in a row, she will always automatically switch to the next slot in the party. In this case, Chiori is in slot 2, which means she will always switch off to Navia, who is in slot 3. You don't necessarily need to put Navia after Chiori if you plan to use a slightly different rotation, but it is ideal in this sample rotation. You cast Furina's E and Q, and then you cast Navia's Q, and then switch to Xianyun, cast her EQ, and then you switch to Chiori. You can decide whether or not you want to burst here, and then you tap her E twice, which should automatically switch you to Navia, and then you do her E skill, you do 4 plunges, you do her E skill again, and then you do 4 more plunges. And at the end, you can of course squeeze in another E skill if it's your first rotation, like you would be able to with any other Navia team. Pro tip, you should always dash after each plunge attack to cancel the end leg of the plunge animations. This is how you can ensure 100% consistency that the Geo infusion lasts long enough for 4 plunges. You can also try to stand close to your target and bunk them for an extra instance of collision damage on your plunges for, well, more damage. Let's find out how we can further improve this team. The first thing I want to discuss is actually something I've alluded to earlier, Chiori's Constellation 1. In this team specifically, as well as in other teams without the presence of a Geo construct, Chiori's C1 is more than a 40% personal damage increase, which is pretty nice. If you plan on upgrading this team with Primogems, that might be something you look into first. Other than that, it's the usual. All 4 characters in this team benefit greatly from a 5-star weapon, Xianyun has a great C2, Furina has an entire suite of God constellations, Chiori and Navia simply do more damage the more constellations they unlock. I want to briefly explain why Chiori is better than Albedo and Zhongli in this team. It's actually pretty simple. She's slightly better on paper at baseline, even assuming everything goes right for the other 2, and has the additional perk of actual consistent energy generation and not getting cucked by enemies breathing on your constructs. If you're worried about losing Zhongli's shield, don't be. You have a whole ass healer in Xianyun, very high crystallized shield uptime, and you spend a solid chunk of rotation time in iframes, dashes, or plunge animations. You won't ever have an issue with defensive utility unless you're the type of player to play Xingqiu over C6 Yelan for comfort. And of course, Chiori actually benefits from vertical investment, whether that's good artifacts, a good weapon, or her constellations, all of which can make her pull ahead more and more. So, how good is today's team overall? I'd give it a solid 8.5 out of 10. It performs consistently well against all content types, has no significant gameplay drawbacks assuming you're okay with plunging, and it absolutely satisfies some kind of itch with its explosive playstyle. I highly recommend you give this team a try if you have the units for it. That is all for today. Have a nice time enjoying some nice Geo thighs in action. Butterfur out, see ya.